Tanika, you get this it? So, so everyone sit down and enjoy Jim's release. It's going to be coming up and thanking all of our wonderful sponsors. Who, if they don't come in the next 20 minutes and fill these seats up, we want you to come and fill them up. So, anyhow, I wanted to stay right after that, and Jim's the one who's going to thank everyone. But I wanted to tell you afterwards, there's a lot of people I wanted to talk to, and at 10 to 9, after the fireside chat is over, you're going to go to Heartland Brewery. Right? Walk out this Microsoft door, and across the street is Heartland Brewery. And everybody in Warren Keystone is going to technologies. You know what? They're reserving the table for us. So if you want to deep dive, you want to talk to me or any of the panelists, we're not going to be there afterwards. And anyway, what's just gonna go off is Step here. Step, okay. Step is our host who's been dodging fires for me today. He's a Microsoft coach, and he's in Microsoft React, and he's giving away some goodies, but he's not here right now because he's downstairs trying to find out what happened to the pizza. But they pizza this way. And it's not even good pizza. Domino's is not my sponsor, so I don't know if there's it's not great, but Microsoft loves Domino's. So it's Domino's that we're getting, even though I'm buying it. Because I know that Microsoft likes it. So that's my story. Sticking to it. And here's Jim. Thanks.
That's Lauren. She puts this all together. She works out all the panelists. She does a lot of work behind the scenes. So I just want to say thank you to Lauren for making this all possible. My name is Jim Williams, and I've gotten roped into this over the last couple of times, but as a school teacher, I'm comfortable standing in front of a large group of audience talking about things. Also, having been in the corporate world, I know how important it is to have financial backing for events like this. So we wanted to go through and make sure that we thanked all the people that really make this possible, so that all the volunteers, everybody here is a volunteer.
Right here. And we're going to do some.
Mass stampede while I go through the thank yous. Go ahead. First of all, we'd like to thank Microsoft for making this space available. They've been doing this now for about 2 years. This is a wonderful space. If any of you have ever tried to work out trying to hold an event somewhere in New York City, in Manhattan, it's not a trivial task. We wanted to say thank you to Microsoft, whose mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet. Actually, it's the planet, so maybe Microsoft knows something we don't, to achieve more. So thank you, Microsoft. Microsoft Reactor, which Sep is still not back yet. Pizza's here, but Sep's not here yet. Okay. Sep is our host, and Sep is the guy who puts his name on the dotted line so that we can be here tonight and enjoy this. He's a part of the Microsoft Reactors, which are neighborhood campuses where developer and startup communities meet, learn, and connect, combining training on the latest technology, community meetups, and events with leaders in the industry. Reactors create an inclusive community for interaction and inspiration. Follow at @MSFTR Reactor on Twitter to learn more. Step? Still not here. Okay, he's going to give out the hoodies later then. That was his cue to give out hoodies. All right. Additionally, McCarter and English LLP. You may have seen the banners out front. They've been a long-time supporter of this organization. They make this really possible, and they are instrumental in helping Lauren with a lot of the technology, a lot of introductions. But they're also a fine group of very capable attorneys, and they can help you in all kinds of areas in all parts of the world. More than 170 years in continuous operation. Its industries include banking, finance, blockchain, smart contracts, cryptocurrencies. Here's the good one, cannabis. We actually have a representative here for the group that handles the cannabis group. Climate change, energy utilities, equipment leasing, on and on and on. Sports law, proprietary technology, manufacturing. If you have needs in the legal arena, they'll be more than happy to help you out and meet your needs. Additionally, VisioTag, our videographers, You may have seen our guys in the back there. One of them right there, he's videotaping this. Visiotag is partner of Disruptive Technologies. You can meet the founders, Jeff and Paul, in the back of the room. I think Jeff's outside. And Steve, I'm sorry, Jeff's outside. Steve's in here. Jeff and Steve. Sorry, Steve. Visiotag provides innovative technologies that greatly extend the intelligence, functionality, and monetization options of all forms of web, video, and audio. Its flagship product, the Visiotag multimedia publishing platform, is a robust host-based framework that uses sophisticated metadata to make online media content easily searched, navigated, shared, and ultimately consumed. So it's a long way of saying they take your video and they index it with names, places, content, whatever, so that you don't have to sit there and scroll through the entire video. You can just say, I want to know about digital currency. I want to know about blockchain. And it'll jump right to that part of the video. So it's a really great service. They do a phenomenal job. They will be doing the same thing with this broadcast. So if you want to check it out, go to the disruptivetechnologies.com website, look at the video, and see what they do with a piece of video that may be able to help your organization. Hint Fusion infused water. They've all had a hint here. I know a few of you have spontaneous celebrations. Please be careful of the carbonated versions. They are tending to erupt tonight. I think the heat is causing them to overflow. Hint contains no sugars, added sweeteners, calories, or preservatives. Their water brands are non-GMO certified, Whole 30 approved. I'm not sure what that is, but I imagine it's good. They're vegan and contain no MSG, nuts, soy, or gluten. And they're working on to minimize the amount of non-reusable plastics in their bottles. So they're actually not a very good product and a very tasty product, but they're also actually working very hard to minimize their impact on the world. And this is a big long list today. Dana Stevens. I don't know if Dana's here. You may have met Dana out at the table. She's handling a lot of the handing out of the name tags. Dana's a longtime supporter of Disruptive Technologies. She has been a strategic advisor to Lauren over the many years, and more importantly, she has sponsored the wine bar over there. And finally, our newest sponsor, the Finnish Long Drink. I personally have not had a chance to taste it yet, so you guys will have to tell me how well it tastes. Long Drink is a top-selling category of alcoholic beverages in Finland, a legend that is now available in America. The roots of long drinks go back to the 1952 Summer Games in Helsinki, Finland, brought to America by the first generation of Finns who want the world to experience the refreshing and unique Finnish long drink. And it is alcohol, about 6% alcohol by volume.
Fisher. Is Fisher here? Fisher.
Sorry. Fisher.
Fisher's friends who are writers.
Oh, there we are.
And where? Come up and get your. And where is Fisher's friends who are writers? Okay, come up and get your beer. I have 4 or 5 more beers. Who wants them? Raise your hand. I'll point to.
Can I just say something? Lauren, all the problems tonight are not due to Lauren. She has faced up to every complaint in an honorable way. So there have been issues, but not due to this young lady.
Okay, I've got 2 more. Okay, somebody has to drink this. Come on, Heineken. Come on up.
There's one up there.
Fine, we have to, yeah.
Okay, we got 2 here.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to be you too.
Seth, do you want to, now that you're here, do you want to give away the hoodies?
No.
Do we have the fishbowl with the fishbowl? All right. Lauren, can you ask somebody to bring the fishbowl in with the name tag?
Where's Steph? Ready?
You want me to grab the bowl?
Whoever needs a bar opener, yes, a bar opener to get the bottle opener. I think Khalil, our bartender, have a bottle opener, Khalil?
Yeah.
Okay, to open your beer, you're gonna have to go over to Khalil.
Not your stuff. I got the bowl. Got the bowl there. Well, hold it and you can draw. This is very efficient. Sure, please, yes. I gave you a little bit of one.
Okay, I missed it. So, I'm Seth. I'm the Microsoft sponsor for the Disruptive Technologies event today. So, that's that. Today, we actually got some giveaways from the Microsoft Reactor space, which is what you're in right now. The Microsoft Reactor is kind of like a technical community safe space. So if you have a technical community that's looking for space, the Microsoft Reactor provides free venue space for any technical community looking to meet. We have this room, this big one that can be divided into two. There's some smaller ones as well, both on this floor and the floor below us. So anyone interested in maybe gathering for some community, come find me at some point throughout the night. Today they are raffling off some hoodies. There's 3 hoodies getting raffled off. They're like zip ups. They say Reactor on them on the breast pocket and then on the back. They're soft, comfy. Love it.
Stylish.
So I'm going to start to draw. Did everyone get a chance to put in their name that wanted to join? It was a business card, or you could write your name and email on it. Everyone did that? Good? Yes? Okay. I'm going to start. So the first winner is Dina Wall. We can clap. You can come over here. The second one is Ruel Ahmed. Am I saying it right? Sorry. Yeah? Awesome.
Yay. We can clap.
Okay, this is the last one. I'll shuffle it. Okay. The last one is Katrina H. Murphy. Awesome, thanks so much. So if anyone wants to find out more about the reactor or Microsoft things, we're represented by me tonight. And also we have a panelist. So listen up, and if you want to come talk to either of us, I'm sure we'll be happy to chat.
Okay.
Is that on? Yeah.
And again, I just want, on behalf of the Disruptive Technologists, thank all of you for braving the heat out there. And, as you can see, I don't deal with humidity very well, so California boy, heat I can deal with, humidity no. Thank you for being here, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Oliver, and he's actually going to start the program that you all came to see as opposed to me.
Fantastic. Woo! Thank you. Fantastic. Well, is my microphone good? No.
I can hear it.
You can hear it? How is that? Can you all hear? Is that good?
Yeah.
Yep, fantastic. Wonderful. Well, is that a no? I'll use the mic. I will use the mic.
You can try pinning it to your collar.
I tried it.
Right, let's go on floor. Here we go. So, firstly, thank you and welcome to Disruptive Technology. Honor? Yes.
Sorry, that microphone isn't working.
Yeah. This one.
Working much better.
There we are. Is that better? Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, technology. The first thing we need to do is solve the microphone. But actually, so we're here at Disruptive Technologists. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful summer's day in New York. Tonight, we're going to be grappling with the economic impact of AI and automation spread. We're going to be talking on job losses. We're going to be talking on where the US stands today and how to prepare for the future. The format tonight is going to be a little different. We're going to change things up just to see how we go. So we have 3 questions, 3 big questions that the panelists haven't been prepped for. And we got together a week ago for a dinner, and much wine was drunk. But they don't actually know what the questions are. So we also only have an hour for this. So how do we solve the big problems in this time? Well, 20 minutes a question means we don't have much time for anything else. With this in mind, we're going to start with a disclaimer. The people here on the panel are talking with their own views, so don't hold it against them. They're not talking in terms of Microsoft or Google or whoever else. Apart from David, you can talk on.
But I'm not talking for Singularity University, New York Angels.
Exactly.
Not for anybody else. I'm talking
Exactly.
for you too. So.
Yes. So with that out of the way, let's be nice. Let's appreciate people's views. Without further ado, and I'm going to be quick, this deck is going to be sent out to all of you, so you'll know in depth who everyone is in a bit more detail. There's not room here to put everyone's credentials. So Rachel is from Google, in charge of international growth. Separately, she's also an author and an expert on China. Welcome. David, if you don't know David, I think you should leave the room. So, very well known in New York circles as an investor and an awful lot more. Check out his full background. This is just a small taste of what he's done. Mark, IBM Q ambassador. Quantum computing, the serious stuff, the things which are going to really shape the next decade or two. Where are we? Ram, he is part of the Business Thinking Institute, talks a lot on diversity. He's also an author. Actually, it happens, everyone on the panel is an author, and I'm writing a book as well. And Pete. Pete is the Microsoft Global, Elite Global Digital Advisor. He also writes for Huffington Post, which is kind of fun. So, we've got that out of the way. You now know the panel. And of course, that's me, but you don't know that. So, we're going to start with a quick clip. It isn't 60 minutes long, but it's recent. And I think it's a good starting point. And again, the panelists haven't seen this, so you're all seeing this at the same time. If it plays, come on. Yeah, give it a prod. Just shout.
AI will increasingly replace repetitive jobs, not just for blue-collar work, but a lot of white-collar work.
What sort of jobs would be lost to AI?
Basically, chauffeurs, truck drivers, anyone who does driving for a living, their jobs will be disrupted more in the 15 to 20 year time frame. And many jobs that seem a little bit complex, chef, waiter, a lot of things will become automated. We'll have automated stores, automated restaurants, and altogether in 15 years, that's going to displace about 40% of jobs in the world.
40% of jobs in the world will be displaced by technology.
I would say displaceable.
What does that do to the fabric of society?
Well, in some sense, there's the human wisdom that always overcomes these technology revolutions. The invention of the steam engine, the sewing machine, the electricity have all displaced jobs, and we've gotten over it. The challenge of AI is this 40%, whether it's 15 or 25 years, is coming faster than the previous revolutions.
So, 40% in 15 years. Hyperbolic or hyper-real? Do we really think this sort of job displacement is going to happen so quickly? Rachel, our in-house expert on China, do we think this is a Chinese view, or do you think this is global?
Let me first, you guys can hear me?
Yep.
So let me first put a caveat in where people get freaked out about AI. I see it as an automation. The way he had said we're exchanging waiters for technology. The first thing I thought was, what's the difference between an automated waiter and a vending machine? You see, like, where there's a lot of things that we already use today. If you go to the doctor, use a stethoscope. Back in the day, they like listen to your heart. I don't even know how they listen to your heart, but there's been a lot of technology we use today. For example, our smartphone. Back then, you had, like 20 years ago, you went to the library. You don't have to go to the library anymore. It doesn't mean that librarians are all unemployed. They just found different things to do. I'm making the point that there will be technology in whatever form it is. It's not like people are just going to sit around with nothing to do. They're just going to find different ways of applying that technology to enhance their day-to-day lives.
David, he talked a little bit, and we're not going to talk on his views exactly, but he talked on replacing chefs. We have the first female Michelin chef in the US behind you. Do you think it's realistic, or do you think he's just not had good food?
Well, I mean, he's saying 40% of jobs are in the next 10, 15, 20 years automatable away. I think that's ridiculous, right? I think it's 80%.
In 15 years? What? Same time.
What? Okay. So, by the way, so that to shock you, but the answer is actually yes. I do pretty close to believe that. Whether the only question is not whether it is 80% or 40% or 60%. It's whether it is 15 years, 20 years, or 25 years, right? I mean, I feel completely vindicated at this point, right? Because I've been saying this, as many of you may have heard of Singularity University. I'm an associate founder of Singularity, and I founded their finance, entrepreneurship, and economics track, and I have been saying this for the last 12 years. One of my keynotes is on the way to a world without work, no more jobs, right? And so the fact that you now have guys like this in that venue saying it, an interesting fact, just today, as of about an hour ago, the latest presidential candidate to make the September debates is one whose entire campaign is based on this fact. And that's Andrew Yang, for those who haven't been following it, who's all about automation replacing the impact, economic impact of automation. He's now in the debate. So at least we're having a public venue to discuss this. And so the answer is yes, he's absolutely right, and yes, absolutely chefs, and yes, absolutely drivers. And if you think about it, what we're talking about here is human ability to make itself economically viable in a completely technologically automated, AI automated world. So what can you do that a machine or a computer or something else can't do?
At under $15 an hour, though, or less, because New York isn't really
But
15 an hour.
the key, if there's one takeaway, if there's one single takeaway that I would love everybody to walk away from here, and that's the essence of Singularity University, and that is exponentials. And we are, as a society, we are not used to thinking in exponential terms. We think in linear terms. I start here, I go there. We have a trajectory. You fire a bullet, it goes like this, right? Exponential, when you graph it, looks like this. Zoing, right?
So, I'm going to mark 80%. 80%.
Good evening.
80%.
Are there any other Brits here, by the way?
Yes. Fantastic.
So we're in the majority then. It's nice being in the former colonies. Go on, fire away.
80%, 15 years, is that crazy talk?
Well, it's X% in Y years.
Right.
It's.
But do you think we'll ever reach that? Do you think it's...
Oh, sure. I think the key question is probably not about the technology. It's about the impact and what that means. I mean, does anybody have an idea what it's like when just to paint a really black picture? What's it like to have 40% unemployment? Anybody got any experience of that? Been in a country where that's the case? It's not good. It's not stable. And the real question is.
Louder.
Up louder.
Uh-huh.
It helps if you switch the microphone on.
Technology!
Thank you. The Englishman obviously proving why you're a former colony. Okay.
Can I just point out IBM Q ambassador, quantum ambassador, for the microphone?
Yeah, well, the microphone was actually in a superposition of being both on and off. And unfortunately, when Lauren did her introduction, she collapsed the wave function and you were all in the off. I mean, yeah, it wasn't just the pizza, it's also you collapsed the wave function. Anyway, to get back to the question, I think the real key question is how do we, whether it's 40 or 80%, doesn't matter. How do we, as a society, bring these people along? How do we not lose them? Losing them will be fatal. It will be terrible. It will be a disaster of unimaginable consequences. And we see this as well. It's very interesting for me as a Brit, as a half Brit, half German, being in the US. The US mentality is very, well, let's have the market solve the problem. Back in Germany, it's let's have father state solve the problem. I think the right answer is somewhere in between.
We'll get back to that. I think.
Okay,
We'll get back
you want me to
the,
shut up now? Okay.
No, let's.
What he said, absolutely, 100% agree.
Ram, you talk an awful lot on diversity. This is the subject of your book or books that are coming out right now. What do you think how do you think it's going to impact?
See, I have, can you hear me okay?
Is your mic on?
This is on. It has a green light.
Yeah, you're good.
See, people are talking. See, people are talking about whether it's 40%, 60%, or 80%, as if you decide it's going to be 80% and everybody else is going to accept it. Look at outsourcing, for example. It was a big wave. When outsourcing happened, what did everybody say? Oh my gosh, all your jobs are going to get outsourced. Is that in fact what happened? No. The moment that happened, there is one course in which I got a B in grad school, system dynamics. Just because I want to do something doesn't mean you're going to let me do it, or you're going to be quiet forever. So, well,
thank you very much.
Sorry, do you mind if we have questions at the end? Just because we can't hear. We'll get to questions at the end.
A bunch of futurists who don't exist anymore as the Department of Western Third Age used to be doing a lot of work for NASA, but they used to paint.
Actually, sorry, sir, we can't all hear you. So can we come back to you afterwards?
Push back against that.
Thank you.
It's a realism of the Millennium Path. It's not going to happen.
okay.
Right.
Going back to what I was saying, so just because somebody says 40% or 80%, doesn't mean society is going to let it happen, because if enough people get unemployed, there will be social unrest. So it's not like you're going to say, you know what, I feel bad for him, I'm going to take him along. What are you, God? So it's a societal problem that will be solved by society. It's a system that will solve it. There is no one individual or a group of technologists that can say, I'm going to fix everything.
So actually, I'm going to jump on that.
That makes three, where I think we're all saying exactly the same thing.
I'm going to jump on that last phrase. Pete, you're the elite global ambassador, which is, come on, it sounds cool, why not? But how is Microsoft approaching this? You work with some of the biggest companies in the world. How are you?
So you're become Microsoft now?
No, I'm saying it's positive, as a positive.
Right. First off, there's an old showbiz adage that you don't try to compete on stage with children or dogs. And I've learned tonight you don't compete with pizza either. And that said, if we had AI to figure out the pizza circumstance, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? So back to Microsoft. What was the question on Microsoft?
Well, it's more that you advise some pretty serious companies out there, including on transformation, digital transformation, AI transformation. How much do you talk on the societal changes which are coming?
I mean, I think we lead with societal changes. Satya Nadella is really clear on how we help companies, large-scale companies and small, transform with the use of data. Data is the underpinning, as we all know, of true machine learning, automation, and AI. And what we do with that data and how we handle that data, we're very clear on. And I think that it will change society. I think we're saying the same things. We tend to, from a Microsoft standpoint, the good of society in agriculture, in education, in healthcare, and medicine with our customers. Absolutely. And then, there are always bad government actors. There's always, the dark web, bad technologists out there. But I think for every good that we do, it kind of overrides what you have said about scale.
The biggest employee across most states is truck drivers. And this is the automated truck. Not a question of is it coming or would it work, but...
Can you speak louder?
Yes, of course, sorry. Yeah. Not so much will it work or when it will work, but do you think we'll have a type of revolution? If you have a truck driver out of work, his career is gone, his identity is gone. is that truck driver going to burn down the next truck he or she sees?
No, but
No, and I'll tell you why. If you think of 100 years ago and the people who were employed 100 years ago, you had like chimney sweepers, you had like what are those carriages, and people like you onto the carriage, and you had horses driving those carriages. Did the world freak out when those got replaced by modern technology? No, they just people find new jobs and there's new openings in other areas where people flow into, and so yes, it will shorten the time span between today and when you Uberize or automate cars or whatnot for trucks. However, again, when a world changes, there are new flows of ways of making money and having new industries prop up, and that's where people flow into.
Do we all agree on that? Do we all think trucks are quite safe?
Oh, yeah. Do we agree that trucks are going to be automated? Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody here think that they're not? No. Yes, clearly. The only question, are you talking 5 years or 10 years, right? I mean, so absolutely this is happening. I think the interesting question, my guess is that everybody on the panel, and probably most of the audience, would accept as given the fact that technology is increasing exponentially, that this stuff is going to happen. You are automating these existing current jobs out of existence, and so on and so forth. The question then comes, and that's what this whole night is about, what do you do about it, right? So one thing is you can say, stop, do not do that. Well, we're past the point where you can say stop. Then you say, we have a revolution and kill everybody who's a technology? That doesn't, maybe. Hopefully that doesn't work either, right? But ultimately, what I think you've heard everybody say is that it's happening, suck it up, accept the fact that it's happening, and then the question is, how do we, as a planet, as a society, as a government, deal with this in a way to let people continue to live, to have value in their lives, and so on and so forth. That's the challenge.
Here's the thing, though. Once again, this goes back to the individual. So you may like what's happening with AI or automation, or you may dislike it. Either way, it doesn't really matter because it's going to happen anyway.
Right.
The only thing that we need to talk about and educate people about is the need for the individuals to change. If you're not willing to change, technology is not going to say, what, James hasn't changed, so let me hold on. And then two,
you've hit a key trigger word for me there, and that is education. And I mean, I don't think there is a way that's formalized or institutionalized. I don't like that word, institutionalized. There's no kind of imperative to educate. I think that's going to have to change.
Suggesting some sort of online course might be a good idea. Well, I mean,
the way you do it, whether it's Singularity University or I don't care. I mean, horses for courses, but the important thing is you do something, and that you make that universally available, and that it is not something that's passive either. Just here's the courses. Take a look at them if you want to, but you actually help people actively. Because unless you do that, you really will lose a large number of people, and that's in German a Pulverfass, and I can't remember what it is in English.
And that's what Ram is saying. The individual has to change. It's the individual. The individual has to change because this stuff is going to happen. And there's a consensus, I think, here.
There's also adoption, right? So it's cultural adoption, individual adoption, and that's how we transform as individuals and as society. So if it's your grandmother using Alexa versus somebody driving a Tesla, flying into space in a SpaceX, right? So it's over time we adopt, and that's a human, element to this whole AI kind of paradigm.
Rachel, going to you as not obviously talking on Google, but what are you seeing in terms of international growth? What's the importance of education there?
I'm going to answer that in two ways. For the international part, I wrote a book on China, which I'll talk about later, but I think if you talk about AI, you cannot have the same conversation without including China and other countries in the process. Now, there are countries like China where there's a lot of data collected. AI is fueled by data. So if you think of the sentiment of the US, and there are people who are nervous about AI, it's not like just because we Americans are saying, whoa, let's stop an AI around the world is going to stop. There are many other countries who recognize that AI is the future. I think we do as well. And it will continue to progress. So in terms of globalization, I look at just an inevitable way that technology changes our world. It's kind of like thinking 20 years ago, we didn't have smartphones. Some of us didn't have Wi-Fi. I don't know, is there a single person here who doesn't have a smartphone now? It's not One person. Well, that's good.
Hey.
Not sure what you're doing at technology. But you see the point. 20 years ago, if someone said, okay, everyone needs to have a smartphone, you got to learn how to use new technology. I mean, it would have been a little intimidating. And then 20 years later, here we are, and we can't imagine our lives without it. So you think of technology going in the future, we talk about AI, we talk about not only the progress of where we are today in America, but also around the world. That is where the future's going. And as we will slowly adopt to that, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and say, why were we so freaked about AI? Why did we think we had to learn all these new things? We just gradually learn and adopt technology as they come.
Apart from this guy.
Apart from you.
Yeah.
So just a leapfrog there. You said something about China. China has the data. The US has extremely mobile capital. And I do this policy work for the European Union. Don't ask what it is. It's a nightmare, but yeah. But the one thing we did identify, or we were very clear on back in Brussels, is that China has data, US has capital, and then we all looked at each other and said, so what do we have? And the answer appears to be a more, I wouldn't say exclusive, but a more human-centric approach and perspective on this kind of change. I'm not going to hold up GDPR as an example of that. It sort of is, and it's sort of a mess as well, but it kind of gets the job done. And I know from the European perspective, you're going to see a lot of similar kind of things, at least being initiated, to cope with or to address this issue of the 40 or 80 or however many percent it is. So putting the individual as an individual in the center of what's happening and why it's happening.
Fantastic.
I feel like I need to do like subtitles over the whole thing over here, right? So this is important stuff. What you just heard is absolutely seminal, and you got to be sure it didn't just zip right by you, right?
You're taking my job. This is
but this is really important. The fact that what you may have missed in there was China has the data. What does that mean? It means you got 1 billion frigging people in a government-controlled society that's controlling the technology. So all of the inputs to all of those things, from people walking through the airport with a thermometer scanning their forehead so you can see exactly what their temperature is, to everything they do, and that incredible source of data is a killer thing for AI. And over here, I was saying, in terms of humanistic, yeah, look at all the stuff we have both in the US on the one hand or in China on the other hand, and Europe really does have the humanist stuff, which is what Ron was talking about.
So we're going to segue off this onto our next topic. And again, the panelists do not know the questions. It keeps things interesting.
It's like an improv show.
Oh, it is.
We're like, what's next?
What's next? So, are we in a new arms race? Or should we be partnering up? Is American exceptionalism over?
Oh dear.
Yeah. Thorny question. Who wanted to jump in first?
I'll jump. See, AI, there is this thing about the creation of AI, the innovation that goes into AI, which is the technology. And 2 is the application, right? China may have data on 1.3 billion people. The US is still the most innovative country in the world, period. And many people have heard this being said, and many people say it. Most people have not thought about why it is. I spent a fair bit of time thinking about it. We are the most diverse country on the planet, period. I'll give you a simple example. The US population is 328 million. Do you know how many of the 328 million are foreign born? 45 million, which is about the population of Spain. So when you get people from 100 different countries looking at a single problem, at an application of AI, they have 100 different perspectives. Maybe some of them will be common. So you will have, because of the diversity of thought that the US possesses, in addition to capital and 3 of the best universities in the world and 10 of the 20 best universities in the world, we have the greatest ability to innovate. That is something that no other country can match.
Except we're ignoring most people. So in New York, 800 languages are spoken, over 800. But you can only register to vote online in 2. 798 are being ignored. Do we think people's voices, I'm going to ask Pete this, because Microsoft does a good job of including people.
Absolutely, as a company we do, and certainly when we work with our customers as well. I just wanted to point out, though, too, we can't be naive to say that other governments, including the U.S., doesn't have massive volumes of data, right, on all of its citizens, right? So, that's one point of view that should be acknowledged. I think you're right, Ram. It's all about diversity and inclusion and shared thought and where true innovation comes from, right? And so if you are walling off that kind of perspective, that innovation, then you're losing sight of the greater good, of what can be built, what can be accomplished with that diversity and inclusion.
Rachel, do you want to jump in on the US, should we say a US versus China view? Because it's different.
Absolutely. Let me put a little bit of context. And to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of Google. When I talk about China, before Google, I was Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Business Operations for China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong for a German pharmaceutical company. I say this because after that, my job was to figure out what opportunities were in China. And what I observed when I was there for 4 years was that China was phenomenal about taking the best from the world and adopting it at home. So we are also very clear that China has a reputation for borrowing, copycatting things from other countries and bringing it into China. And they were phenomenal at it. I mean, things just got copied overnight. And they recognized...
This is going to be the Twitter quote, borrowing.
Absolutely, very good at borrowing.
Yeah.
The biggest aha I had was, why aren't other countries borrowing the best from China and applying it back at home? So for example, that's the reason I wrote the book. I spoke at Columbia Business School. I advised, a bunch of S&P 500 companies and VCs and whatnot. And they would always ask, what do I do with China? China's going to be this huge competition. How do I compete with them? And I said, look, you're playing the wrong game. China never said, I'm going to be innovative like America. They said, I'm going to take the best of Twitter and Facebook and create WeChat. They literally took the best apps in the world and created it all together in one app, and that's called WeChat. And it is a phenomenal app if anyone's ever played around with it. It has everything in it. So if you think of what America has compared to everyone else in the world, we are extremely good at innovation. However, if you think of what China has done, they are extremely fast at everything. If you think of the typical company here, you have an idea, you hem and haw, sit in meetings, and like 1 year later, you might try it. In China, the philosophy is, look, try it. If it doesn't work, kill it, move on. So you try something, you fail, or you just go with it, and you just boom, and you just throw a bunch of resources at it. And it's the speed that will make China, I believe, win the AI war. However, there's nothing stopping America from taking a look at China and every other emerging market that's doing really well and saying, what have they done well, and what can we learn from that?
Mark?
I have a comment there. I think that there is, at least to my knowledge, there's one area of technology where China does lead the world, and that's in, I think, medical science.
Yeah.
They are, for a variety of reasons, they are simply further. Yeah. So it's not just being good at copying stuff, they're actually leading the world in that area.
Yes.
But you wanted to ask me a question.
I wanted to ask you about quantum.
What's that?
Is China leading the way? Is
well, I mean, that's the question I didn't want you to ask me.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up.
You're going to pay for this later.
I know I will.
Yes, you really are. You really are, and you don't realize yet. But anyway, we don't know. We really don't know what China's doing with quantum. Officially, they're investing really, really large amounts of money. If you look at government programs around the world on quantum computing, I don't know the exact figures, but the US, it's with the Quantum Initiative plus a few other small things, it's a couple of billion. The European Union has a quantum flagship, plus various regional projects. It's probably getting close to 3 billion. So actually investing more than the US. This time. And China, it's very difficult to tell, but the official figure is somewhere between 10 and 12 billion. It could be 20, it could be 3. You don't know. But they're very hot about it.
Can they just outspend, or do they need brains to get there?
They need brains.
Diversity and so on?
You need brains. Let's say at least to where quantum computing is right now, let's be very clear, it's not a mature technology. It's still on the research bench. We're still working on how to develop algorithms and not how to implement them for a business case. That's
But it's not
years away.
it doesn't have brains.
But to answer the question, you need brains. You need brains because the technology itself, algorithm design, these are not easy things to get your head around. I mean, I'm not probably PhDs, at least master's degrees in physics, mathematics, computer science. That's the kind of level it's still at. I'm sure in years to come that will become easier when somebody finds a way to simply and clearly understand how quantum physics works. Good luck on that one. But that's not going to change soon. So there's a very high technological barrier and a very high educational barrier to developing on quantum computing. But China has the people for sure. They have very bright people.
Above all, they have the government. One thing I can't emphasize enough, what is unique about China and most communist countries is when the government says go this way, there is a lot of power, thus a lot of money. And so when you follow the flow of money, and China has announced that they are very heavy on AI, so that is where the money will continue to flow. That is where, if you look at globally around the world, to your previous question, when there's a lot of emphasis on a particular area, that's where people go. And that's an opportunity for America. If you look at companies or VCs or places where investments are going into, that is also where investment will
You've queued up the next question fantastically. David, do we think we need regulation in AI, or is it going to slow everything down?
Well, again, this gets back to the core question that we've all been talking about, right? And so my belief on technology, at this point, we have now sort of passed the Rubicon, right? If something can be done, it will be done.
But will it be done well?
No, it doesn't matter. No, but the bottom line is if something is technically possible, number one, and on some level with exponential growth, everything is possible. And therefore, if it is possible, it will be done because with 197 countries or whatever is around the world, you can regulate it here and it'll pop up over there. You want cloning, you want nuclear weapons, whatever. We've seen that there is no technology that can be encapsulated in a country, right? So therefore, it's going to happen. So the question then comes back to what we were discussing before about the role of government, the role of society and culture, which is how do we, you can't stop it, right? You can't outlaw it. How do we, as a society, whether you say that's a global society or a U.S. society.
You're dodging the question. Would you regulate?
No, I'm not dodging the question. I'm expanding the question.
Okay.
Because the answer ultimately is the society's ability to change something and guide something and deal with it is through regulation, is through, governments are instituted among people to set up rules that are greater than one person. And so the answer is yes, clearly. I mean, in the same way you don't want, no matter what you think about immigration, you can't have open borders in the U.S. You'd have no country tomorrow morning, right? There is no such, I'm
going to come back to a regulation question. So, with less regulation in the US for, say, aircraft, would you fly Boeing tomorrow, or would you prefer Airbus? No. And this is for everyone.
Airbus.
No, Ram, you worked on Boeing.
I worked for Boeing for 5 years.
Yeah.
I fly Boeing any day.
Would you fly tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
But this,
if you buy the ticket.
But this whole presentation is not very innovative, is it? You don't ask a question from anybody.
Wait, we'll come back. Sorry, you can ask a question afterwards.
Could you hear me for a second, please? Right. You want to,
actually, we can't all hear you, so it's a little rude.
You're trying to push the future,
Wait,
but
can I just stop you?
your structure.
I'm sorry, sir.
Your structure is based on the past. You have 3 people on this side, and there are only 5 people there. Listen to the voice.
Sit down. We don't want to hear you.
You're not.
We'll talk afterwards. There's a few other things happening.
Ask questions. Ask questions.
No, you can.
We're going to do that afterwards.
Ask questions.
We're going to bring you a microphone.
No, ask questions. It's very old-fashioned.
No, I'm sorry. We do that afterwards. We always have done it this way.
But your structure is based on the past.
So let's move on. Let's talk about the biggest opportunities. What could happen next? There's a lot of disruption happening, but what could be the best things coming out of this technology? Rachel, what have you seen that you've loved?
I'm going to go into what you said about healthcare. I spent my entire career in healthcare before Google, and I'm personally extremely excited about it because there are many ways that technology can expedite diagnosis and treatment. Who doesn't want to be diagnosed faster and better so we live longer? There's already a lot of new technologies today that AI has worked on, my company being one of them. But if you think of the future and you think of the reason why people are dying today, a lot of it is cancer. In terms of cancer research, in terms of diagnosis and treatment, and et cetera, AI has already broken some ground, and I think others.
Let's name check. Are there particular companies, countries that you love because it's cancer? I mean, who do you like?
I can't answer that. Well, I'm not going to answer that.
We'll do a follow-up.
But I'll just echo what Rachel is
please.
saying. I mean, and again, I come back to agriculture. I mean, and sustainability. AI can do amazing things with making our planet sustainable. You know, huge issue. Education as well. Not replace teachers, but assist teachers, right? I mean, who doesn't know an overworked teacher that AI could potentially aid and assist in education overall? I mean, I think those are really good, clear use cases that can be deployed and implemented worldwide, not just in the US.
Ram, what are you seeing out there which you love, which makes you excited?
I think the question needs to be more specific.
Yes, please. Rephrase it. I don't mind.
No, see, for example, when it comes to AI, there are certain things that will replace people, like replacing a truck driver. So you have one set of problems with that. Two is it augments what you and I do. That's another set of things. Third thing is you get a chance to work on AI, which are the technologists. So the answer depends upon which one of those three groups you're talking about. You cannot put all those three together and try and answer it. It's hard.
No, I made it hard for you. You do talk a lot on diversity, that diversity is the new edge for what we can build.
If you want to tap into diversity, the second bucket is the most rich bucket. You know, how can we use AI to augment humans? You get people from 150 countries who live in this country and say, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? If you get at least 150 different views, you have more ideas than China can do because China is a monolithic culture. There is a dominant culture and everybody has to fit into that society. The US is not that way. For all of our problems, innovation is something we encourage, we reward. The problem in the US is we have a short-term orientation. Like I go talk to investors and say, would you invest in this thing? They say, will I get 100% return in the next 18 months? I say, go put the money in the bank. That was a joke. Right?
Actually, I'll put you on the spot now, David. What would you invest in next?
See, this is where my personal predilections show because, because I am an entrepreneur.
Now, do I need to say this is not investment advice, or should we go for it?
No, that's fine.
Fantastic.
I'm not a registered broker-dealer, so. No, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And entrepreneurs are people who create businesses and who use the capitalist system, use technology, use innovation, use all these things to ultimately create value. Society defines value in terms of money as currency, interchangeable things that you can use within a system to do things. And so therefore, I believe that financial technology, in its full panoply of everything, right? If you believe in innovation, if you believe in entrepreneurship, if you believe in applying technology to all these new crazy things, ultimately, it is all involved in moving money, making money, using money, so on and so forth. So therefore, since money and the financial system is a relatively new place to apply technology, I think we have not even scratched the surface.
It's strangely bad in the US, retail especially.
But just everything. I mean, whether you're talking about payment systems, whether you're talking about investing scenarios, whether you're talking about crowdfunding, whether you're talking about there are just so many things, areas in financial technology where you're just now beginning to apply tech to finance. So I think that's a totally open area.
One comment on that. It's a very American point of view, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm British and I'm German. It is a very American point of view. It's why America was created. It's why it happened. There are other point of views, and my takeaway is open your eyes to the other point of views. We've heard about the Chinese one. It's a very monolithic culture, it's true, but a very clear idea of long-term vision. And the European one is definitely different. I don't know which is the best. In terms of, you wanted an answer to the question, what examples of AI where I'm like,
What excites you?
What excites me?
Oh, this is fantastic.
So I would, anything to do with medicine and AI, anything to do with that. And also, you mentioned it, agriculture. It's fascinating to watch micro robots harvesting grapes. Obviously, I'm not in any way French at all, but I do enjoy red wine, so that's going to definitely improve the yield on good red wines. But yeah, I'm using technology for those sort of things. I find it very exciting. But I think it's very important, don't close your eyes to the other perspectives. They're just as valid as the US one. What's the population of the US?
328.
So it's like, I don't know, 10% of the, no, not even 10, 5% of the world's population. Don't forget the other 95%. They also have an opinion and also have a way of life. One thing I do notice, actually, being on business here in the US, is an awareness of let's say, the financial consequences involved with this fundamental change that, especially that automation is going to bring, that many, many more people are basically not going to be able to provide an economically viable input into society in the way they do today. And that whole model has to change. And how do you do that? And that's a cost. I mean, to a European, it sounds very cynical. Yeah? That's a cost of doing business, and you've got to calculate it in and do something about it. So that's quite exciting.
We weren't going to talk about universal basic income, but
yes, universal basic income.
But whether that or something, I mean, that happens to be the simplest, easiest, and right now, because Andrew Yang.
What do you think the other thing might be?
Oh, there are a bunch of different ways to get to the same end. But look at what he just said. I mean, he's absolutely positively right. And that's what I said before. When you have 80% unemployment or 40% or pick a number, X and over Y years, right? That's the only question in this exponential world. What that means is those people who are unemployed, why are they unemployed? They're unemployed because they can no longer, their abilities, their skills, their package is no longer economically viable in a free market.
So I'm going to ask you.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Right there, at that point. The fundamental problem there is not the technology, it's the unwillingness of people to change.
To adapt and adopt.
If you're not willing to adapt and if you blame technology, technology is going to keep changing anyway.
Yeah, but at some point, by definition, 1/2 of the population, take the United States, 1/2 the population of the United States has a double-digit IQ. 2/3 of the population of the United States has no college education, okay? You tell me, in this exponentially advancing technology, with all these disruptive technologists and AI people and quantum and so on and so forth over there, what is the logical outcome for somebody with a double-digit IQ and no education in here, right? There are certainly some things, child care, senior care, whatever, that some of them will appropriate. But it's not everybody is going to be the right person to take care of your children if they can no longer drive a truck, right? I mean, so once you get to a point where a large percentage of the population...
I quite like that visual, though, somehow. It's fantastic.
Well, I do think, though, Rachel was alluding to that. The first, second, third revolutions, right? We had the same issues. Humans were talking about that. So maybe we need machines to help us figure out what those net new jobs will be, what that economy looks like. Maybe we'll be building, cities, on Mars, and we need those to deploy those same workers in Mars. Who knows, in 2040, 2080. So I think, it's that same kind of use case, back to what Mark says, as we evolve, as we adopt and adapt.
Well, true, but whether the answer is yes, technology ultimately I think is the savior of all this in some way. The question is when. So there's a whole school of thought which comes, that Rachel was alluding to and you're alluding to, which is that technology creates new jobs, new opportunities, and so on and so forth. And that's this world of abundance that we're heading into when technology can solve a whole lot of problems. And in full disclosure, a lot of the Singularity U types, Peter Diamandis in particular, who's a co-founder of Singularity U, wrote a book called Abundance, believe in this. And I too believe ultimately that technology in a remarkable...
And it's not the first time this has happened. We were told we had abundance.
Yeah, but that way,
in the
let's stop
50s.
for a second.
Yeah.
So the answer is it's not the first time that technology has dislocated some types of things. But keep in mind...
I was talking about abundance, though.
But keep in mind this exponential change, right? Historically, if you take a power curve, which is what an exponential curve is, and you take it back and you put it in a linear world, until you hit the knee of the curve, it looks like a linear line going up, right? Now that you have this disruptive change, I do believe ultimately when you get up here, you will have a land of abundance. But the question is, where I differ from a lot of other people who are completely optimistic singularitarians, is that they think the world's going to go like this, and we're all going to be happy people. I think the world's going to look like this, right? And the question there is, what do you do in the relatively near term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when you have a very large swath of the population, 20, 40, 60, 80%, pick a number, can no longer economically, in a free market economy, make use,
So I'm going to use each of you as an example for this. Think tomorrow you wake up, your job has been replaced. You can no longer work in technology. You no longer have a job. You still get paid something. What would you do?
I'm a writer, so I already have that answer. I've adapted my whole career, from where I started to where I am today. I don't fear that for myself. I only speak for me, and maybe that's my American white privilege bleeding in, who knows? But that is just from my lens of the struggle that I've had. I've certainly been displaced, in my life, in a career. If you've lived long enough, you have gone through that, and you redefine, you adapt. We've all at dinner the other night, we're talking about that. Look at the journey Rachel had. Look at the journey Ram has had. David, you're like, my gosh, you've had your hands in everything. So that's my answer. I'll stop there.
So my answer is just as simple and clear to me. No question about it at all. I'm an entrepreneur. By the way, in this universe, entrepreneurs are the one protected class, right? When you look at all that, seriously, when you take that 20, 40, 60, 80, 90, 95, 97, 99% unemployment, that last 1%, those are entrepreneurs.
Right, I'm going to take that away from you. What would you do?
I'm being deadly serious because entrepreneurs, by definition, the job function of an entrepreneur is to take whatever they're given, whatever the ground rules, right, and then make something new out of it. That's what we do. Like a cockroach, you can't kill us.
Like a cockroach.
Okay, that's a picture I like. Yeah. That's a picture I like.
Actually, Mark, what do you think? Firstly,
you said it.
Firstly, is he safe?
Is he safe?
Yeah. Oh, it's a pause.
Well.
Oh, it's no.
No, that's a well.
It's a qualified yes, because no, it's a yeah. He's safe because to get to the no, I'd have to tell a story which is hours long. No,
we have time.
But it's a yes with a but.
And what would you do if you were no longer working in technology?
Well, there are two answers to that. The first one is the kind of facile, I'd be hanging out at his place and we'd be making music. Yeah. By the way, extremely therapeutic, just brilliant. Just make music. If you ever have the opportunity to make music, make music. It does wonders for your brain. The other answer is my background, and especially the background of my parents. I experienced some economic shit happening at a very young age, and I don't ever want to go there again. So I'd be out doing
scrambling
something, anything.
Let's say it wasn't financial; it's just curiosity.
Just curiosity.
If you didn't have to work, he's saying if you didn't have to work.
If I didn't have to work, I'd be making music.
Fantastic.
I'd be making music because I'm not
I do want to
too bad at it.
What are you going to do? Sorry, Ram.
No, please, yeah.
I just wanted to add a couple onto that. You know, for New York, again, this is very centric. I'm a New Yorker, native New Yorker. It's often said about New York, finance is the heart of New York. The arts is the soul of New York. And I think you look at technology as the nervous system of New York. You know, apply that to society, a city, anywhere. And can we all coexist? Can that all coexist? Can those skills coexist? Yeah, can machines create some things creatively? Yeah, to a degree, but you know, there's that whole kind of other that whole other left brain, right brain that we haven't really addressed, and also the bias when you're saying about the challenges. Maybe we'll get there. The bias in AI and how you train those AI models. Really, really challenging, potentially scary.
But the answer had better damn well be yes, because if the answer is, you know, to can these coexist, is no, we should all pack up, go home, and jump off a cliff, right? Because that's humanity.
Rachel, what would you do?
Obviously, we sit on panels all day. I'm being facetious, but I'm actually serious. If you think about our jobs all in tech, our jobs didn't exist 30 years ago. I work at Google. Google didn't exist 30 years ago. And somehow, 30 years later, I have a job. If you think of technology, we're all here live at a panel discussion. Let's be clear, if you search the internet for panelists on AI, you could have sat on your couch in your pajamas watching it at home, and yet you guys are here. AI is not going to replace everything. And there will always be areas where AI cannot get into, one of which speaking on this panel. So there will always be new areas that you could fall into. And I just want to emphasize the point, AI can enhance and it will change the landscape we see today just the way 30 years ago technology didn't look the way it did today. But it's not like we're sitting around at the unemployment line. We just find other things to do.
Ram, what would you do? You can't write another book. What would you do?
No. See, as an immigrant, I've started from zero. I've been chopped down to zero, and I've started over a couple of times. I'll figure out a way. I have 100% confidence.
And a track record.
And a track record. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like we've started a band, so that's going to go well. There's probably a couple more books out of this and a few more panel discussions. So I'd like to give great thanks to the panel for all their views. Thank you for being a fantastic audience, and I'd love to hear questions. Now, your question has to be in the form of a question. We don't want a statement or something too long. The woman just here.
Thank you. Hi, first of all, thank you. It was really very interesting. My question is this. So first of all, I feel with David Rose, it's more like 80%, maybe even earlier than 15 years. And I founded an AI startup, so I feel I'm accelerating the process. But I'm curious as to why you feel that it's primarily blue-collar workers that will be displaced, or retail workers. I think there's really AI that will displace high-level data scientists and white-collar workers in banks. That's number one. Number two, I'm surprised that you said, Rachel, that China is really advancing because they do things quickly. My feeling you mentioned about the medical, how they're so advanced, is because they have data. Data is king. To me, China will maybe move faster than the United States because they have all this data.
Let's jump on that. So,
Sure. So a couple of things. I'm going to try to remember all the points. So number one, in terms of the white collar, I agree. So in medicine, as an example, since you mentioned that, if you think of radiology, so radiology, as you guys know, you just do an X-ray and you're like, oh, this looks like a cancer, and you visually see if it looks like it could be, something that is concerning. AI can do it in a much more accurate way than humans can. We already have that technology today. So you're absolutely right.
It's fair to say it's much, much better in China and Europe than the US.
Yes. So I want to make sure I understand your second question about AI could be fast, but you're asking about the data?
Oh, no, I was saying that the reason China's advanced is because specifically I was thinking of the radiology example. I have friends who are radiologists, but China is now king in radiology. The AI is superior to people doing it, and I feel that with data, not just medical advances like you mentioned, but I think data will just, crank out all the advances and will best us unless we have some other way to compete.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to give you an example of the breadth and depth of the data that is collected in China. And that's just, I happen to work there and live there, so that's why I talk about China. There are obviously many countries in the world. China's not the only country besides America that's investing in AI. As an example, if you take the train, they look at your passport and you have to scan your passport to get on a train. If you want to get in a hotel, they scan your passport and to make sure you can check into that hotel. You're tracked everywhere. And this is, obviously facial recognition and new technology that they're collecting every bit of information in the way that you may not be able to in America. So as you know, data fuels AI. So if you have a lot of data across 1.4 billion people, you're going to have a lot of data. That's why I personally believe that AI will be very strong and will continue to be very strong in China. On top of it, if you look at what the government says, historically, when the government says we're going here, everyone follows. It's a communist country. So when you have the government already announcing we're very focused on AI, I have reason to believe that history will repeat itself and that that's an area that will continue to grow.
So for me to answer your question about why do we think it's only blue collar, I don't think anybody here thinks it's only blue collar work. But, okay, I didn't do the slides, right? but that being said, if there's one thing I would want everybody here to take away, right? It's this concept of exponentials and this concept of the power curve. And the thesis that if anything can happen, it will. So there is absolutely zero question in my mind that you will have autonomous vehicles, you'll have autonomous surgeons, you'll have autonomous chefs. The only question is when. Is it 5 years, 10 years, 15, 25 years? And so the answer is yes. Everything, right, from computer scientists to doctors to chefs to you name it, is going to increase. The only question, it so happens, the low-hanging fruit are things that are physical, repetitive jobs that are, assembly line stuff, and then driving cars, and then agricultural things that we talk about and so forth. But yeah, nobody's safe. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Let's have another question.
I think there's a question on the left over here.
Yeah, there's a question. But you had a statement, right? Just one blank statement?
That's what say one thing.
Statement? Okay.
The robots are coming.
Okay, you go ahead and ask
The
your
robots are
question,
coming.
sir.
Hi, but there's been some discussion about governments having lots of data, but so do private corporations. And we don't have to get into any by name, but there's a lot of data about a lot of people in a lot of places. So my first question pertains to guardrails around AI and how will we make sure that AI as a tool is used in positive ways and not in ways that might be limiting to personal freedoms or otherwise, if not illegal, at least immoral.
So I'll paraphrase this just to get to something. So should Facebook be allowed to change an election? Yeah, so should Facebook be allowed to change an election?
I mean, we had danced around that, right, Oliver? You had asked us about should there be regulations, right, on new and emerging technologies. Is there, do we need to be concerned about ethics? Absolutely, 100% we need to be concerned. I'm sure IBM has a unique take on that, as does Google, Amazon, Microsoft, certainly. Who are the rule makers? I think historically, technology emerges, and then I think governments and society figures it out from there. There will always, as I said, bad actors, when emerging technology happens, be it a government or be it, kind of some sect somewhere. So really good questions. I don't think we have those answers.
I think there is an answer. Your question was, can you prevent, how do you prevent it? And the answer is you can't.
Right. Are there guardrails?
But there's another answer. There is another answer. You used the phrase guardrails. So there's another answer, and I know if I look at Europe again, and that's something I don't really see happening in the States. A lot of money in AI research being funneled into things like explainability. Now I know explainability is a red herring. It's kind of not really possible, but at least people are looking at it. At least research is being done. At least some progress is being made. And if you do nothing, then you will just have monolithic systems making arbitrary, to the people who are impacted, seemingly arbitrary decisions with no basis, often no basis in fact. They feel disenfranchised, they lose trust. We all know where that goes. At least in Europe, I see a lot of money being invested in research on, like, if an AI system makes a decision about me, then it has to be able to explain itself to me, it has to be able to justify that decision. And that's going to be important. It's not the answer, but it's an important aspect, I feel. That's my European, what is it, 5 cents?
Yeah. One quick question, David. Do you still also get adverts for shampoo? Because I do.
But again, the overall, if there's one thing to take away, right? If something can happen, we are past the era at this point, right? And a global, the U.S. is 5% of the population. China has got 4 times the population. You've got rogue actors all in 192 countries. There is nothing you can't put in definitive guardrails that will prevent things from happening. All you can do is try and stay the good guys one step ahead of the bad guys. And as a society, I am an optimist. I'm a cockeyed, optimistic entrepreneur, and I believe that society is 50.1% good. And somehow we will stick 1 foot, 1 toe ahead of the bad guys who are trying to use, suitcase nukes to blow up New York or Beijing, who are trying to use EMPs to destroy society, or whatever it is. I am an optimist. I think we will survive, because if you're a pessimist, just pack it up and go home.
Another question.
I think we have one right over here.
Right here. So, trick question, because it's an economics question, and I know there aren't necessarily any economists on the panel. But it's, where's the effect of AI in the productivity numbers? I mean, we've been looking at it, and it just doesn't show up. It's not there.
So I'm partially an economist. I play one on TV at least. And the part of the biggest challenge we have in defining all of these things is, historically, all of our definitions about progress and productivity have been jobs, the price of goods sold, GDP, so on and so forth. When you have all of this automation and technology that is dropping the costs and automating, that is getting rid of the jobs and dropping the cost of producing this, and you get to this world of abundance, when you are producing the same number of chairs and the same number of pizzas, when you are doing it with fewer people.
Sorry.
Sorry?
Can you slow down just a little?
Sorry. Okay. So my point was, historically, we have tracked the productivity of a society by saying, what are the economic, how many jobs are employed, is job growth growing, is the GDP growing? But what we're seeing with the application of technology to productivity, you are producing the same number of pizzas and chairs and microphones with fewer people, selling it for less dollars because the price is cheap.
Exactly the measure of productivity. If you are producing more pizzas with fewer people, you're becoming more.
Okay, I'm not sure. That's what I'm saying, but in terms of, if you look at productivity in terms of the things that you are producing and the speed, you are increasing the productivity, but all of the things we have historically used to track those things, job growth, economic dollars, are effectively out the window, and that's a very real problem.
Do we need a new metric, do you think? Do you think it's quality rather than quantity?
No, absolutely, because we can't use traditional metrics to track what's
You're saying much better quality pizza.
Interesting question.
Why not?
And yes, you take away a lot of the crap work to spend more time on the smart work, essentially.
Go again?
You're eliminating a lot of the crappy work so that you can focus on the smarter work, essentially.
Okay, I have the microphone here. The Microsoft. I was very impressed with the statistics for both of you. Would you please tell us, 1/3 of the American people have double digit of IQ. Could you help us understand how the 2/3 will deal with AI? And for your neighbor, 45% of Americans are divorced. How could this diversity withstand in the next 10 to 25 years, contribute really to the AI technology? Are we still going to be here to bring our input on the AI improvement? Thank you.
I think I could start with I think it was like the blue collar versus work collar jobs and how that kind of balances. Where's the equanimity to that? And potentially with AI, in an automated society, maybe that's where we have some more balance. White collar jobs will be eliminated. I agree. I mean, attorneys, and this is not my personal experience at all at Microsoft, but the law profession itself is terrified of machines and automation. Pardon me, any lawyers in the room, for some very clear reasons, as are bankers, right? So I think potentially that will be the leveling field. Of lower skilled workers versus higher skilled workers, and maybe there's a balance that divide becomes less and less over time, potentially. My point of view.
We're all equal.
Yeah, right. And we all go party or whatever you got.
Play music.
Play a band. We all go and play a band.
We have another question out here.
At the back.
Or there? Okay, you first. Here's a question.
We're going back and
Wait,
forth.
wait.
Then left.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to talk about two things related to the role of government, because I think the problem is really vast, and I think we've only just scratched the surface. And there are two questions I have. The first one is related to self-driving vehicles, and that it requires an infrastructure to support these autonomous vehicles. And why should we as a country invest the trillions in that infrastructure that will benefit more companies, but less so the individual and displaced jobs? And so that's the first question. The second question is, we rarely speak these days of industrial policy, something that was critical after World War II. And if you look at Lordstown, now for the employees, it's kind of like take the transfer offered or you're shit out of luck. So the government does not take an adequate active role in ensuring that these people will have options of how they can still make a livable wage to cover housing, clothes, food, et cetera, healthcare, pension, and so on. So many people take a kind of Darwinian approach. It's something like someone else's problem, and they kick the can down the line. Saying we'll find other things to do, I think, is very naive. And we can't let pockets of our society being left with no options other than trailer homes, opiates, heroin, fentanyl, and meth labs. Our country will not be sustainable.
Do you mind if we take the second question?
I need to say something. There is that long drink. Where is Adrienne? Okay, everyone, she's a very loud talker, so she can talk. That long drink is not beer, it's gin.
All right, now you're talking.
It's not always because people thought it was beer. It's gin. Okay? So everybody get up, and whoever likes it, Westbrook does, gin over there.
Should I tell the quick story?
What?
To go on to questions.
Don't know.
So apparently the answer to the question is gin.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's wait and finish this question.
Sorry.
So if you don't mind, I think it's a fantastic...
So, I mean, just finishing that up is like, what's the role of the government now in addressing this
So if you don't mind, I love the second question. I think the first we've covered before. It's a serious one. Are citizens who can't retrain shit out of luck? What should the government do for this?
Well, there are two different questions there, right? So, but I think the core question is, what is the role of government in addressing this? And clearly, what everybody has been saying for the entire panel is that this stuff is happening. Society has to do something, because left to a purely Darwinian, Adam Smith, capitalist, unfettered free market, definitionally this can't work, because definitionally people will not be able to pay for their life on Earth. So therefore, if that is an unacceptable alternative, which I believe everybody in this room would agree is unacceptable, you can't let people starve or whatever on mountaintops, right? Either that or you have revolution. It doesn't work either. Either way, it's not going to work, right? So therefore, society has to do something, and society says it does things in the form of government. And so now you have the governmental question, and this is where Mark was coming back to, which is you have a very different approach between the U.S. and Europe and China, frankly. You've got three approaches.
So is David Rose telling us he's not a pure capitalist?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You heard it here first. Or would you say capitalism needs to change?
No, capitalism is what capitalism, a free market society, a pure free market is what it is. It is a very efficient way to get things done. The problem is a very efficient way would have, tomorrow morning, 20% of the population eliminated, and, 10 years from now, 40% of the population eliminated. And while that would be a very efficient way to produce chairs and pizzas and stuff, it would not be particularly good for the 40% who are eliminated. So therefore, that's why we have society, Declaration of Independence. That's why governments are instituted among men in order to provide for the common welfare, promote the common welfare, and ensure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, so on and so forth. That's why we have government. And so the fact of the matter is, the Europeans have done, one could argue, a better job at that so far than the Americans. You asked.
I think I can speak for everybody here. I'm impressed. I'm impressed in your delivery. It's amazing. I think the government thing. Yes, you're right. And now I'm going to, as the token European, I'm going to kind of shoot myself in the foot. I think there is still a role for, let's say, this highly mobile thing you Americans have under one proviso, that leaving people behind is a significant, and once it gets above a certain threshold, a major factor. And if you in the US, if you just calculate that into your damn business cases, you would take over the world. We'd leave us Europeans behind and the Chinese as well. All you need to do is just that one little thing.
I agree.
That's all you need to do. Don't leave people behind.
It's bad business.
Question back here.
I mean, even your Marines, right? That's their motto, right? You leave nobody behind. I mean, just do what the Marines do.
So I'm breaking your rule a little bit by first saying that just yesterday I read an amazing, nuanced article in The Atlantic about AI from the standpoint of Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and this other gentleman who worked at Cornell Tech. And I highly recommend everybody to read it, because it also is talking about the grand strategy and the complexity around national security and AI, and the lack of opaqueness is going to cause a lot of issues around all of that. But I know you said that you've addressed it already, but I do, and I appreciate the panel leaning a little bit more towards you can't leave everybody behind, or to that notion, because I think that there can be new roles that will, and okay, it's not fully a question, but the new roles will pop up, I think, because of the need to integrate, let's say, advanced manufacturing. People aren't always going to have that STEM education to be able to do advanced manufacturing. So what do you do with that population? And so you perhaps need new roles that would allow that integration of that population. So I think it's much more nuanced and much more complex than the panel is addressing around AI and a certain population. It's not just going to be people are just going to find new jobs. I think it is more complicated. And what you had said earlier, that there will be social unrest. And so I guess it's not a question, but it's a deep concern that I have in listening to the panel.
So Oliver, I got a comment to make on that. So Germany's economy is more or less manufacturing. And the Industry 4.0 is a German thing. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's all about, robotics, of course, but also some specific technologies about how do you completely and totally automate manufacturing processes. And as an IBMer, I was very deeply involved in the beginnings of that Industry 4.0 initiative in Germany. And it was very interesting to see how manufacturing companies and chemical companies and pharmaceutical companies and all these people producing things, not services, but things, how they dealt with that and how their workforces dealt with that and how they didn't leave anyone behind. I mean, they managed to do it. And there is no kind of, there is no all singing, all dancing solution to how you do that. And I can't say we have to do, if you do this, this, and this, and this, then nobody gets left behind. The important thing is that you look at that, you take it seriously. That's the important thing. And then your point about us being perhaps a little bit naive, yeah, maybe, but the alternative to not taking this aspect, this particular aspect, seriously is, let's be honest, it's not a pretty place. It's not going to be a nice place to be.
Fantastically poetic. We're going to have to wrap.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap. You know what?
No, we need to.
One sec. The reason we need to wrap is because we're having to. Benel, is she here? Hi. She's gonna set up the fireside chat where there's wine and there's gonna be cheese and other hors d'oeuvres and crackers. And raise your hand. This Bruce. He's our AI expert. He works for a French company called Avis, and he's our moderator for the fireside chat. And basically, you can do a deep dive. I'm hoping that these panelists will join him, and you can actually ask them directly your questions. And then if that's not even enough, at 9 o'clock, you're going to go with Sigrid, who's the big, tall blonde that's at the front desk. And she's going to take you just across the street to Heartland Brewery, and we're going to do another deep dive there. We have a reserved section. So
Are you picking up the tab?
I have to. What?
Are you picking up the tab?
I'm not picking up the tab.
You got the pizza.
I'm not.
We got it. But the thing is, Adrian, do you want to say one thing about long term?
I want her to ask her questions if you leave for a really long time.
You know what? She's going to have to ask it in the fireside.
I don't want to ask it in the fireside. It's an actual question.
Okay.
What are we going to do to change our education system? It's a real question. Everybody's beating around the bush, but something basic has to change.
I think an awful lot needs to change. I think it's such a deep topic. Could this be one of the subjects?
The problem is that I promised Microsoft that we would be out the door at 10 minutes to 9. This is an all-volunteer organization. We don't make any money. We have no money. And they are doing this for us as a benefit. And so I'm trying to I try to be as good as I can to Microsoft because they're really good to me. And so the reason we're cutting it short and moving it to there, and that is a really excellent question.
I think it is, yeah.
But I think it's an actual question.
Deserve a full panel discussion just on that one alone? Another session?
It's a pretty deep question. Yeah. So what I would like is for the panel, for the fireside chat, Bruce, is for her to address that question first. And everyone can be in the fireside chat. It's just everyone moving over there with the wine and cheese. So it's the same thing, just a different moderator. And I think then that way you can get your question talked to directly.
So let's finish by thanking the panel.
Side chat stay here. Okay,
we can't.
And continue with the questions and answers.
So we need to wrap the panel, but let's thank our panelists. And thank you, everyone.